Okay, thanks for having us tonight. Kay and I were both involved with the Students for Souls shoe drive in 2012. This was a challenge that was between the Souls for Souls charity organization and the O'Neill High School Respect groups to collect 20,000 pairs of shoes and to raise $2,000. And if those numbers were met, or the equivalent of cash was raised to offset any pairs of shoes we might have come up short, Souls for Souls agreed to send one O'Neill High School student and one adult leader on a shoe distribution trip to the village of La Carpio in Costa Rica. The Respect groups worked really hard. They started out by preparing shoe collection boxes, which they placed around in many different locations in our community and churches and businesses for people to donate their shoes in. And presentations were also done at other schools to encourage students from other schools to help us collect all of these shoes. So the challenge was accepted, not only for the value of the many shoes that would be gathered and for those in need, but also to have one of our local teens find out for themselves what it's like to experience the cultural differences of how teens live in impoverished villages and compared to what we have here, and to come back and share that experience with her peers here back at home in O'Neill. So it was an enormous undertaking, but when reflecting back over the 5 months of the shoe drive and our days in La Carpio, it was truly the little things that touched our hearts and had very long-lasting impressions upon us.
As the shoes started flowing in, we gathered to sort, count, and pack the shoes. Students helped out during our Respect group meetings, as well as after school. However, the final week of our shoe drive, we were gathering at least 1,000 pair of shoes every single day. So we decided that we needed more help. So various people in the community helped us, including our local Rotarians. They came out one evening and helped count and pack shoes. Our final shoe count was 13,696 pair of shoes in about 3.5 months' time. We filled an entire semi-truck with boxes of shoes. Next, we had to get the shoes to the Souls for Souls collection center over in Sheldon, Iowa. Marv Fritz from here in town at the tomato plant graciously assisted us with that part of the project. He donated a semi-truck and his time to drive the truck and haul the shoes to Iowa for us. It's amazing to see what we can accomplish when everybody pulls together and helps out. After we got into the project, it was obvious that we would not be able to meet our goal of 20,000 pair of shoes by simply gathering shoes here in O'Neill. So we reached out to other communities. We had collection boxes in many towns, from O'Neill to Norfolk to Grand Island to McCook. Another thing we did was advertise in other communities that we would have mini shoe drives in other towns. So we would advertise that we'd be there a certain morning or a certain afternoon to collect shoes from their town. Then Connie or I, or one of our mothers, or Ellen Buschert, would go set up shop for a morning or afternoon in these other small communities to collect shoes. One such afternoon, my mom went to a nearby town and set up shop for 3 hours. She parked her pickup in front of the grocery store that afternoon and waited for people to start dropping off their shoes. Not long after she got there, an elderly woman came out of the grocery store and stopped to visit with my mom about what she was doing. So Mom shared what was going on, and this lady was very interested and quite impressed. After a bit, she went on her way. The afternoon passed, and Mom was just getting ready to close up shop and go home. And a young gal that worked in the grocery store stuck her head out of the door and told my mom that a couple of ladies had just called and that they had shoes to donate, but they were running just a little bit late, so they wondered if Mom would just wait a few minutes and she said sure she would. So the first lady, she came shortly thereafter and dropped off her box of shoes, and Mom loaded them in the pickup, and then she was just waiting, and pretty soon she saw this elderly woman from earlier in the afternoon walking down the street carrying a brown grocery sack. So she walked up to my mom, and she said, "I've thought about this all afternoon since we visited, and I've decided it's time." She then handed the sack to my mom, which contained one pair of shoes. Boots, spit-shined, fitted with shoe forms to keep their shape. They were her son's combat boots. Shortly after he got home from the Vietnam War, he had had a motorcycle accident. He was in a coma for 20 years before he passed away. The faith that woman had on that April afternoon in her home in small-town Nebraska. I like to think her healing moved forward as she found the courage to let go of this peace that she'd been holding on for so long, and by selflessly giving it to someone else in need. This incident is what turned this project into a faith-filled journey for me. It truly became a journey of love from that point on, a journey I'm so thankful I was a part of.
At the end of the shoe drive, Stephanie Ross was the student chosen by a committee based on her application and her involvement in the shoe drive. 2 months later, there was a group of us off to Costa Rica. The village of La Carpio was basically a shanty town built up around a local dump. It was about an hour's drive outside of San Jose. A community organizer had put out the word that we would be in the village that week to distribute shoes to the children. So this was the scene when we got there on the first day. They were waiting for us. We were able to utilize a small one-room school to set up our feet washing stations and piles of shoes sorted by size. As the children came in, part of our team was down on their hands and knees measuring what size of feet they had on little paper charts on the floor, and then they would take a marker and write the size on the child's hand. The children were then ushered to the wash basins where we were waiting for them, and we asked their names. ¿Cómo se llama? It's one of the only phrases I remember. And that's when the real fun began. We washed their feet and tried out our few lines of rehearsed Spanish as we did anything we could to keep them entertained and smiling during the few minutes that we got to spend with each precious child. After we fit them with a pair of shoes, we received the ultimate reward, and that was the hugs. Every minute of collecting, hauling, counting, and packing of shoes was totally worth the effort when we had the warmth of those hugs. Some of the kids hugged long and hard, and you just knew it was about much more than receiving a pair of shoes. I believe it was about somebody caring for them and spending just a little one-on-one time with them. Another one of those little things that surprised our team of volunteers, and we were with a group of, did we have 18 or 19 in our group, Kay? They were from Texas, California, they were from all over the United States, 5 of us from Nebraska. And we all brought things to share, little goodies to put in the treasure chest and share with the kids after they got their shoes. They could come by the table and pick an item. And it was hard to restrict them to 1 or 2 little things, and it was a good thing we did because we had 900 kids come through that week, so it was a lot. But what really surprised us is with these kids, the first thing that we ran out of was toothbrushes. I would have never even thought to take toothbrushes, but one of our team members from Florida went to the dollar store and bought bundles of toothbrushes, and that was the first thing that was gone. And they had these children that sleep on a piece of cardboard on a dirt floor and have hardly anything, had all these toys to pick from, and yet they would select a toothbrush. So there was one also little boy that came to the table, and he stood there and studied that table for the longest time. And then he finally picked up a bottle of nail polish, and through our translator we found out that he'd picked that up because he wanted to take it home to his mom. So, pretty precious moments. One day, when we were finished up for the day and we were walking through the village back to our bus, I spotted a darling little familiar face. Earlier that day, I had the pleasure of meeting Victoria at my wash station and fitted her with a pair of shoes. Now I was seeing firsthand where little Miss Victoria lived. Those were the hardest times, even though her living conditions broke my heart. Her smile and her spirit was amazing to me as I just watched her happily play with her friends. It was truly a roller coaster week of emotions. You can't help but be affected by both the heartache and the joy when you're on a trip like this. When those that have so little can appreciate the smallest of things, then why can't we? The other lasting treasure from this whole experience was the joy of sharing this journey with a friend. Kay's positive attitude and dedication to this project kept me going and made it so much fun. When we put this together, we realized how much we missed hanging out together. So we spent a lot of time together those 6 months. But God truly blessed us in many ways, and we know His presence was evident throughout our journey. As stated in Matthew 18, verse 20, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there in the midst of them." Thank you.
You know, when I was listening, and I'm sure you probably felt the same thing, I just thought about these 2 women serving God, and it reminded me of a scripture in Matthew 25:35 that says, "When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat, and when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. And when I was a stranger, you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me, and when I was in prison, you came to visit me." And Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." So we just want to thank you. Thank you for serving God in this way by serving the people that are His. Thank you.